Elena Vasquez stood in front of the large window in her office, looking out at the orange sky of Kepler 442b. The twin suns were setting, painting everything in shades of red and gold. 3 years ago, this view had filled her with hope. Now, it only reminded her how far from home they really were. The quantum communicator behind her desk had been silent for exactly 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Elena knew because she counted every single day. The last message from Earth had been routine. Supply schedules, personnel updates, nothing urgent. Then nothing. Complete silence. Administrator? Elena turned to see Dr. Marcus Chen standing in her doorway. The chief engineer looked tired like everyone else on New Geneva these days. His once neat uniform was patched and faded from years of making do with what they had. "What is it, Marcus?" "The mining crew in Sector 7 found something." Marcus stepped into the office, his face serious. "Metal fragments. They're not from any of our equipment." Elena felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. For months now, there had been signs. Strange sensor readings at the edge of their system. Brief energy signatures that appeared and vanished before they could get a clear reading. The council had hoped it was nothing. Space debris, maybe old survey probes from the early colonization days. "Show me," Elena said. They walked through the corridors of the administration building. New Geneva had been built to house 50,000 people, but it felt different now. Smaller somehow, despite the same number of colonists. The walls needed paint, and some of the lights flickered because they no longer had enough spare parts. Everything showed the wear of 3 years without support from Earth. In the engineering lab, Lieutenant Sarah Kim was examining the metal fragments under a microscope. Sarah was their only remaining military advisor, a young officer who had been on temporary assignment when the communications went dark. Now she was their entire defense department. "Look at this," Sarah said without looking up. "The metal has a crystalline structure I've never seen before, and there are burn marks consistent with energy weapons." Elena picked up one of the pieces. It was lighter than it looked, with an almost mirror-like surface that seemed to shift colors in the light. "How old are these?" "Based on the oxidation patterns, maybe a week, 2 at most." The 3 of them stood in silence for a moment. They all knew what this meant, even if none of them wanted to say it out loud. "We need to call a council meeting," Elena finally said. 2 hours later, the colony's senior staff gathered in the main conference room. Elena looked around the table at the faces of people who had become like family over the past few years. Dr. Chen sat with his datapad, ready to present his findings. Sarah had brought her tactical assessment. Colony physician Dr. Amanda Foster sat quietly, her medical training making her all too aware of what alien contact might mean for human biology. "We all know why we're here," Elena began. "The evidence suggests we're no longer alone in this system. I need to know our options." Sarah spoke first. "From a military standpoint, we have very limited defensive capabilities. Our mining lasers could be weaponized, but they're designed for precision work, not combat. We have 43 civilian shuttles that could be modified for reconnaissance. Our only real advantage is that we know the terrain." "What about the orbital platforms?" asked Dr. Foster. 2 cargo handlers and a communications relay," Sarah replied. "The cargo handlers have some basic point defense systems, but nothing that could stop a serious military force." Dr. Chen pulled up a holographic display of the system. "I've been analyzing the sensor data from the past 6 months. Whatever's out there, they're being careful. They're staying at the edge of our detection range, probably mapping our defenses, or deciding if we're worth the trouble," Elena said quietly. The room fell silent again. Everyone knew the stories from the outer colonies. Ships that arrived to find settlements empty, buildings intact but no sign of the people. Other places where the structures were melted slag and the ground was glass. The galaxy was a dangerous place for isolated human settlements. "What about the distress beacon?" asked Dr. Foster. Elena and Marcus exchanged glances. They had discussed this many times in private. The colony's emergency beacon was powerful enough to reach Earth, but it would drain their remaining power reserves completely. And even if Earth received the signal, even if Earth still existed, help was 127 light-years away. We could send it, Elena said, but we need to assume we'll be on our own regardless. Over the next few days, life on New Geneva took on a strange double quality. On the surface, people went about their daily routines. The mines operated on schedule. Children attended school. The hydroponic farms continued producing food. But underneath, everyone could feel the tension building. Elena spent her time reviewing old files, looking for anything that might help. She read reports about other colonies that had faced similar situations. Most of the stories didn't end well. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Tommy Chen, Dr. Chen's 12-year-old son, had been playing with an old radio telescope as part of a school project. The boy had discovered how to modify the equipment to pick up signals on frequencies that the main communication array couldn't detect. "Dad, you need to see this," Tommy said, bursting into the engineering lab where his father was working late. Marcus followed his son to the small observatory where the school kept their teaching equipment. Tommy had connected his modified radio to a computer and was recording signal patterns. "I've been picking up these weird transmissions for the past 3 days," Tommy explained, pointing at the screen. "They're not random. Look at the pattern." Marcus studied the data, his face growing pale. The signals were definitely artificial, and they were getting stronger. More importantly, they were coming from multiple sources. Whatever was out there, it wasn't just one ship. That night, Elena called an emergency session of the full Colonial Council. All 12 department heads crowded into the conference room, along with the leaders of the various work crews and residential blocks. "The situation has changed," Elena announced. "We now have confirmation of multiple alien vessels in our system. Based on the signal analysis, we estimate at least a dozen ships, possibly more." The room erupted in worried voices, people asking questions, making suggestions, expressing fears that had been building for days. Elena raised her hand for silence. "I know this is frightening, but we've survived 3 years on our own. We've faced equipment failures, supply shortages, and every challenge this planet could throw at us. We're stronger than we think." "But what do they want?" asked Maria Santos from the residential committee. "We don't know," Elena admitted. "But we're going to find out, and we're going to be ready." The next morning brought their answer. The communications board in the main control center lit up with an incoming transmission. Elena and her staff gathered around the main screen as the signal resolved into an image. The creature that appeared on screen was unlike anything in Earth's databases. It stood nearly 7 feet tall, with a chitinous exoskeleton that gleamed like polished metal. 4 arms ended in clawed hands, and its head was elongated, with multiple eyes that glowed with an inner light. When it spoke, the universal translator had to work hard to make sense of the alien language. The voice that emerged was cold and mechanical. "Humans of the 3rd planet. I am High Commander Thrakvel of the Zephyrian Empire. Your settlement exists within territory claimed by the Empire. You have 72 standard hours to surrender, unconditionally. Submit to Imperial authority and you will be relocated to appropriate facilities. Resist, and your colony will be cleansed from existence." The transmission ended, leaving Elena and her staff staring at a blank screen. "Appropriate facilities," Dr. Foster said quietly. "That sounds like slave camps," Sarah finished. "I've heard the reports from other systems. The Zephyrians don't negotiate, they conquer." Elena felt the weight of 50,000 lives settling on her shoulders. As administrator, every decision was ultimately hers to make, and now she had to decide whether her people would fight or surrender. 72 hours, she said. "We need to make the most of them." The next day transformed New Geneva into something between a fortress and a monument to human determination. Every person capable of holding a tool was given a job. The miners organized their equipment into defensive positions. The engineers worked around the clock to modify civilian vehicles into something resembling military hardware. In the deepest levels of the colony, people began moving supplies and setting up shelters. If they were going to make a stand, they would make it count. Elena stood once again at her office window, watching the preparations. In the distance, she could see the lights of the mining operations, still running because the work had to continue. People needed to feel normal even as they prepared for war. Marcus appeared beside her, carrying a data pad with the latest reports. "The beacon is ready," he said quietly. "One pulse, and Earth will know what happened here. If Earth is still there to receive it." Elena nodded. They had talked about this moment for 3 years. The possibility that they might be the last free humans in the galaxy, that Earth itself might have fallen to some alien empire, leaving only scattered colonies like theirs to carry on humanity's legacy. "When?" she asked. "Just before the deadline. We'll tell our story. Then we'll show them what humans do when cornered." Elena looked out at her people, her friends, her family, everyone she had sworn to protect when she accepted the role of administrator. They deserved better than this. They deserved to see Earth again, to walk under blue skies and breathe air that didn't need to be processed and recycled. But they also deserved to know that they mattered, that someone would remember their stand even if no one was left to hear about it. 72 hours, Elena said again. "Let's make them count." Outside, the twin suns of Kepler 442b continued, their eternal dance across the orange sky, indifferent to the small human drama playing out on the world below. But in the growing darkness between the stars, something was stirring, something that would prove the Zephyrians had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that New Geneva was alone, forgotten, abandoned. They had no idea that humanity had a very different definition of those words. The countdown had begun. The second day of the countdown began before dawn. Elena had barely slept, spending the night reviewing evacuation plans and defense strategies that all seemed inadequate against an alien fleet. The coffee in her mug had gone cold hours ago, but she kept drinking it anyway, needing something to do with her hands. Dr. Chen knocked on her office door at 500 hours. "The beacon modifications are complete," he reported. "We can transmit on all frequencies simultaneously. If anyone is listening, they'll hear us." Elena nodded, though they both knew the chances were slim. Even if Earth still existed, even if their government was still functional, the message would take 127 years to reach home at light speed. The quantum communication network that had once connected all human colonies had been silent for 3 years. For all they knew, humanity's interstellar civilization had collapsed entirely. "How long will the transmission last?" Elena asked. "With full power? Maybe 20 minutes. After that, we'll be running on backup power only. 20 minutes to tell Earth everything that had happened on New Geneva. 20 minutes to say goodbye to a world they would never see again." Outside Elena's window, the colony was already bustling with activity. People moved with purpose through the streets, carrying supplies, equipment, anything that might be useful in the coming fight. The sight filled her with pride and broke her heart at the same time. Sarah Kim appeared in the doorway, her uniform crisp despite having worked through the night. "Administrator, I need to brief you on our defensive preparations." They walked to the colony's emergency command center, a reinforced bunker built into the mountainside. The room was small but efficient, with displays showing every sensor reading, every camera feed, every critical system in the colony. "We've positioned the mining equipment around the primary settlement," Sarah explained, pointing to a tactical display. "The heavy laser drills can punch through most materials, but they're slow to aim and have limited range. We've also rigged shaped charges in the processing facilities." "Charges?" Elena asked. "If we can't hold the colony, we can deny them the resources they're after. The deuterium processing plant, the rare earth mines, all of it. They want our minerals, but they'll get slag and rubble instead." Elena studied the map. Red dots showed defensive positions. Yellow markers indicated civilian shelters. Blue lines traced evacuation routes through the underground tunnel system that connected the colony's major structures. "How many people can we get to the deep shelters?" "All of them, if we have enough warning. The tunnels can hold the entire population for about a week. After that, we'll run out of air recycling capacity." Elena traced one of the blue lines with her finger. The tunnel system had been built during the colony's early years, when they worried about meteor strikes and solar flares. Now it might be their only hope for survival. In the residential district, families were making their own preparations. Maria Santos helped her neighbors pack emergency supplies: water, food, medical kits, anything small and portable. Her 8-year-old daughter Rosa clutched a stuffed animal and asked questions that Maria couldn't answer. "Why do the aliens want our planet, Mama?" "They want the things we dig from the ground, Mija, the special metals that make their ships work. Can't we just give it to them?" Maria paused in her packing. How do you explain to a child that some beings in the universe take what they want and don't care about the people who get hurt? That slavery and genocide were real things that happen to real people? Sometimes, Rosa, there are bad people who take things that don't belong to them, and sometimes good people have to stand up to them, even when it's scary. Rosa nodded seriously, the way children do when they sense something important is happening, even if they don't fully understand it. In the mining district, shift supervisor Jake Morrison was teaching his crew how to modify their equipment for combat. The heavy-duty laser drills were designed to cut through solid rock, but with some adjustments they could burn through alien armor just as easily. "The key is the focusing array," Jake explained to a group of miners who had never thought they would need to know this information. "Tighten the beam like this, and you can punch a hole through steel at 200 meters. His crew listened intently. These were people who spent their days working with dangerous machinery in hostile environments. They understood how to operate under pressure, how to work as a team, how to get things done no matter what. If they had to fight, they would fight, with the same determination they brought to their daily work. Tommy Chen was in the school's computer lab with several other children, but they weren't playing games. Tommy had taught his friends how to monitor the alien communication frequencies, and they were taking shifts listening for any change in the signal patterns. "This is important," Tommy told his friend Lisa, who was 2 years older and took everything very seriously. "The adults need to know if more ships arrive." Lisa nodded and put on the headphones. Through the static and interference, she could hear the occasional burst of alien communication. The sounds were harsh and guttural, nothing like any human language. Even through the electronic distortion, the voices sounded cold and cruel. Dr. Amanda Foster was preparing the medical center for casualties. She had never treated combat injuries before, but she had studied the files from other colonies that had faced alien attacks. The Zephyrian weapons caused burns that went deep into tissue. Their claws carried bacteria that were toxic to human blood. If her people were going to fight, some of them were going to get hurt. She organized her supplies and briefed her small medical staff on emergency procedures. 3 nurses and 2 medical technicians to handle whatever the next day would bring. It wasn't enough, but it would have to do. "Remember," she told her team, "our job is to keep people alive. No matter how bad it gets, no matter how scared we keep working. People are counting on us." As the day progressed, Elena made rounds throughout the colony. She visited every district, every work crew, every family shelter. People needed to see her, to know that their leadership wasn't hiding in a bunker somewhere. She answered questions when she could and listened when people needed to talk. In the engineering section, she found Dr. Chen working on something he called the final message beacon. "It's not just a distress call," he explained, showing her the transmission setup. "I'm uploading everything. Our history, our culture, our science. If we're the last humans in the galaxy, at least there will be a record." Elena watched as terabytes of data flowed into the beacon's memory banks. Digital books, music, art, scientific research, personal messages from families to loved ones on distant worlds. The entire cultural heritage of New Geneva, compressed into a signal that would outlive them all. "How much can you fit?" "Everything that matters," Marcus replied. "The technical specifications for our colony systems, detailed maps of this planet's resources, even some of the children's school projects. Whoever finds this will know that we lived here. They'll know we mattered." That evening, Elena called a general assembly in the main plaza. The entire population of New Geneva gathered under the orange sky, 50,000 people looking to her for answers she didn't have. "Tomorrow we face the unknown. Elena began. "I won't lie to you about our chances. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and very far from help. But we're not helpless." She gestured toward the mining equipment positioned around the plaza, toward the shelters that had been prepared, toward the people themselves. "For 3 years we've survived on our own. We've built a life on this world through hard work and determination. We've faced every challenge this planet could throw at us, and we're still here. Tomorrow we face a different kind of challenge, but we face it together." A voice called out from the crowd. "What if Earth is gone? What if we're really alone?" Elena had wondered the same thing every day for 3 years. It was the fear that kept her awake at night, the possibility that gnawed at everyone's mind. "Then we'll be the last free humans in the galaxy," she said. "And we'll show the universe what that means." The crowd dispersed slowly, families holding each other close, friends making promises to watch out for each other. Elena remained in the plaza until everyone had gone, looking up at the alien stars that had become familiar over the years, but had never felt like home. Sarah approached her as the last civilians disappeared into the residential buildings. "Final sensor sweep shows 37 alien vessels in orbit," Sarah reported. "They're not even trying to hide anymore." Elena nodded. The Zephyrians were confident, and why shouldn't they be? They faced a single isolated colony with no military support and no hope of escape. In their experience, humans were probably just another primitive species to be enslaved or eliminated. 18 hours left, Elena said. "Are you really going to send the beacon?" Elena looked up at the stars one more time. Somewhere out there, 127 light-years away, was a small blue planet where her species had been born, where her grandmother had taught her to garden, where she had studied engineering and dreamed of exploring the galaxy, where she had met the husband who had died in the colony's 3rd year from a disease that would have been curable on Earth. "Yes," she said. "Even if no one's left to hear it, we're going to tell our story." As the night deepened, New Geneva settled into an uneasy quiet. In the residential districts, parents tucked their children into bed and tried to act like everything was normal. In the defensive positions, volunteers took shifts monitoring sensors and checking equipment. In the command bunker, Elena and her staff finalized their plans and tried not to think about tomorrow. High above, the Zephyrian fleet maintained its positions around the planet. High Commander Thrakvel was pleased with the lack of response from the human colony. Most species tried to negotiate or flee when faced with Imperial might. These humans had done neither, which suggested they had accepted their fate. The commander had conquered 17 worlds for the Empire. This would be the 18th and probably the easiest. A single isolated colony with no military vessels and no defensive installations worthy of the name. His ships would barely need to power their weapons. In 18 hours, New Geneva would belong to the Zephyrian Empire. The humans would be processed and shipped to labor facilities throughout Imperial space. The planet's resources would fuel the Empire's expansion to new worlds. It would be routine, efficient, forgettable. Thrakvel had no way of knowing that he had just made the biggest mistake in Zephyrian history. He had no way of knowing that humanity had very different ideas about what happened to colonies under attack. And he had no way of knowing that at the edge of the system, passive sensors were already detecting the quantum signatures of ships dropping out of hyperspace. The countdown continued, but New Geneva was no longer alone. The final 6 hours began with the twin suns rising over New Geneva's eastern mountains. Elena stood in the command bunker, watching the sunrise through the reinforced windows. The orange and red light painted the colony in colors that reminded her of fire. She wondered if that was an omen. "Final head count complete," Sarah reported from her position at the tactical display. 48,732 people in the deep shelters. The remaining 1,000 are with us in defensive positions. Elena nodded. They had debated this decision through the night. Some people had volunteered to stay and fight, even though they had no military training. Others had important technical skills that might be needed. A few, like Dr. Chen, simply refused to hide while others faced danger. "Status of the beacon?" "Ready to transmit on your command," Marcus called from his engineering station. "Full cultural archive, distress signal, and tactical data about the Zephyrians. If anyone out there is listening, they'll get the complete picture. Elena looked around the command center. These people had become her family over the past 3 years. Sarah, young and determined, who had taken on responsibilities far beyond her training. Marcus, brilliant and dedicated, who had kept their technology running with spare parts and ingenuity. Dr. Foster, who had stayed to treat the wounded instead of going to safety with her patients. They were about to face an enemy that had conquered 17 worlds. An enemy with advanced technology, superior numbers, and no mercy for humans who resisted. Elena had read the reports from other colonies. She knew how this usually ended, but she also knew her people. For 3 years, they had faced impossible odds and survived. They had built a thriving community on a hostile world without help from Earth. They had turned miners and farmers into engineers and scientists. They had proved that humans could adapt to anything. Incoming transmission, Sarah announced. The main screen flickered to life, showing High Commander Thrakvel aboard his flagship. The alien commander looked exactly as intimidating as he had the day before. 7 feet of chitinous armor and predatory grace. Behind him, Elena could see other Zephyrians preparing for battle. Humans of New Geneva. Thrakvel spoke through the universal translator. The deadline approaches. Surrender now and you will be treated according to Imperial protocols. Continue your resistance and we will demonstrate why 17 worlds have fallen before us. Elena stepped forward so the alien could see her clearly. She had spent an hour that morning making sure she looked like the leader of a thriving human colony, not a desperate survivor on a forgotten world. High Commander Thrakvel, she said formally. I am Administrator Elena Vasquez, speaking for the free people of New Geneva. We have considered your offer and we respectfully decline. The alien's multiple eyes focused on her with what might have been surprise. Most species surrendered when faced with the Empire's might. You choose destruction over accommodation? We choose freedom over slavery, Elena replied. And we choose to show you something about humanity that your 17 previous conquests apparently didn't teach you. And what is that, human? Elena smiled, and for a moment she felt like she was back on Earth, standing up to a school bully who thought he was tougher than he actually was. We choose to teach you that attacking humans has consequences. Thrakvel's translated laughter was harsh and mechanical. You have mining equipment and civilian shuttles. We have a battle fleet. What consequences could you possibly deliver? You'll see. Find out, Elena said, and cut the transmission. The command center was quiet for a moment. Then Sarah spoke up. Administrator, incoming contacts. Multiple Zephyrian landing craft dropping through the atmosphere. Elena looked at the tactical display. Red dots were falling like deadly rain toward the colony's main settlement. 200 landing craft, each carrying 50 soldiers. 10,000 alien warriors against their handful of volunteers with improvised weapons. Marcus, send the beacon. Transmitting now, Dr. Chen replied. His fingers flew over his console as 3 years of human determination and defiance shot out toward the stars. Full power, all frequencies. If anyone's listening, they'll hear us. Elena opened the colony-wide communication channel. Throughout New Geneva, her voice reached every shelter, every defensive position, every person who had chosen to stay and fight. Citizens of New Geneva, this is Administrator Vasquez. The enemy is beginning their assault. I want you all to remember something. In the hours ahead, we are not victims. We are not forgotten. We are free humans making a stand for our home and our families. Earth may be silent, but the spirit of Earth lives in every one of us. She paused, watching the red dots on the tactical display grow larger as they descended. We have shown this galaxy what humans can build in peace. Now we show them what humans can do in war. All stations, report ready. Sector 1 ready, came Jake Morrison's voice from the mining district. Sector 2 ready, reported Maria Santos from the residential area. Sector 3 ready, called Tommy Chen from his position with the improvised communications array. 1. By one, the defensive positions reported in. Ordinary people who had become soldiers because they had to. Miners and farmers and teachers who had learned to fight. because fighting was the only choice left. The first Zephyrian landing craft touched down in the main plaza, their sleek forms materializing through personal teleporters as the alien soldiers prepared for battle. Elena watched through the security cameras as the first enemy soldiers stepped onto human soil. They were even more intimidating in person than on the view screen. 7 feet tall with forearms ending in razor-sharp claws. Their chitinous exoskeletons gleamed like polished metal, and their weapons hummed with barely contained energy. They moved with the confidence of soldiers who had never lost a battle. "Contact in Sector 1. Jake's voice crackled over the comm. "Mining crew engaging." Elena switched the main screen to show the mining district. The heavy laser drills that Jake's crew had modified were already firing, their brilliant beams lancing out toward the advancing aliens. The first few Zephyrians to round the corner of the processing plant simply vanished in clouds of superheated vapor, but more kept coming. The aliens quickly adapted to the threat, using their personal shields and superior speed to close the distance. Elena watched Jake's crew fall back to their secondary positions, the heavy mining equipment too slow to track the fast-moving enemies. Sector 2 under attack. Maria's voice was steady despite the sounds of battle in the background. They're trying to break through to the residential tunnels. On another camera feed, Elena could see Maria and her neighbors fighting desperately to hold a barricaded intersection. They had plasma cutters and construction tools against military-grade energy weapons. It should have been no contest, but the humans fought with the fury of people defending their homes. A Zephyrian soldier rounded the corner and Maria's team opened fire. The alien's personal shield absorbed most of the damage, but one of the plasma cutters found a gap in the energy field. The soldier fell, bright blue blood staining the corridor floor. "Good shot," Maria called to her team. "Keep them back," but Elena could see more aliens approaching from multiple directions. Sector 2 couldn't hold for long. "Dr. Chen, what's the status on our surprise?" Marcus looked up from his console, sweat beading on his forehead. "Charges are armed and ready, just say the word." Elena had hoped it wouldn't come to this. The shaped charges they had placed throughout the colony's industrial facilities would deny the Zephyrians the resources they wanted, but they would also destroy everything the colonists had built. 3 years of work, gone in an instant. "Not yet," she said. "We hold as long as we can." On the main tactical display, the battle was spreading throughout the colony. Red markers showed Zephyrian forces advancing through the streets. Blue markers showed human defensive positions. Too many of the blue markers were going dark. "Tommy." Chen's voice came over the comm from his position with the communications array. "Mom, Dad, I'm picking up something weird on the long-range sensors." Elena frowned. "What kind of weird, Tommy?" "Energy signatures at the edge of the system. They don't match the Zephyrian ships." Dr. Chen looked up from his station. "Tommy, are you sure? Run the analysis again." "I'm sure, Dad. There's something out there, and it's big." Elena felt a flutter of hope in her chest, but she pushed it down. Hope was dangerous when you needed to make clear decisions. Whatever Tommy had detected, it was too far away to help them now. "All sectors continue holding your positions," she announced. "Make every shot count." The battle raged through the colony's streets. In Sector 1, Jake Morrison's mining crew had fallen back to their final defensive line at the heavy equipment depot. The massive machines that had once carved tunnels through solid rock now served as improvised bunkers. Jake himself was operating one of the modified laser drills, its beam carving through alien soldiers and their equipment with equal efficiency. "This is for Colonist Chen," Jake shouted as he targeted a group of Zephyrians trying to flank his position. The beam caught them in the open, and they simply ceased to exist. But the aliens were learning. They had started using their own energy, weapons to target the human positions from long range. The mining equipment was tough, but it wasn't designed to withstand military-grade firepower. One by one, Jake's defensive positions were being eliminated. In Sector 2, Maria Santos was running low on ammunition for her plasma cutter. The aliens had broken through their first barricade and were advancing toward the tunnel entrances that led to the civilian shelters. "Fall back to Checkpoint Beta," Maria ordered her team. "We can't let them reach the tunnels." Her neighbor, An elderly man named Roberto, who had been a soldier on Earth 40 years ago, nodded grimly. Like old times, Maria, except the enemy's uglier. They retreated through the residential district, fighting for every meter. Maria's daughter, Rosa, was safe in the deep shelters, but Maria knew that if the aliens broke through here, no shelter would be safe enough. Back in the command bunker, Elena watched her people fight and die for their freedom. The tactical display showed Zephyrian forces advancing on all fronts. Her volunteers were holding longer than anyone had expected, but they couldn't hold forever. "Administrator," Sarah called from her station. "The aliens are massing for a final push on the command center. Estimated time to breach, 20 minutes. Elena nodded. She had always known it would come to this. The command bunker was the colony's last stronghold, built to withstand natural disasters but not military assault. "Marcus, prepare the final charges. If we can't hold the colony, we make sure they get nothing from it." Dr. Chen's hands hesitated over his console. Destroying the industrial facilities would eliminate years of work, but it would also send a message. Humans would rather destroy what they had built than let it be stolen. "Charges ready," he reported quietly. Elena opened the colony-wide channel one more time. "All sectors, this is Administrator Vasquez. The enemy is closing on our final positions. I want you all to know that you have fought with honor and courage. You have shown the galaxy what free humans can accomplish." She paused, looking around the command center at the faces of people who had become her family. "If this is our end, then we end it on our terms. No surrender, no submission. We are citizens of New Geneva, and we choose freedom." The Zephyrian assault on the command bunker began with a barrage of energy weapons that shook the reinforced walls. Elena could hear the aliens outside, their harsh voices coordinating the attack through translated speakers. "Breach in the outer door," Sarah reported. "They're coming through." Elena drew the sidearm she had hoped never to use and checked its charge. Around her, the command staff prepared for their final battle. But then Tommy Chen's voice crackled over the comm, excited and disbelieving. "Administrator, the signatures I detected, they're not Zephyrian ships. I'm reading quantum wake distortions consistent with human hyperspace technology." Elena's heart stopped. "Tommy, are you certain?" "Positive, and there are a lot of them, more ships than I can count." Elena looked at the tactical display, but it only showed local contacts. Whatever Tommy had detected was still too far away to appear on their sensors. "How long until they reach us?" "Based on the energy signatures, maybe 10 minutes?" 10 minutes. Elena looked around the command center. Could they hold for 10 more minutes? The sounds of battle were getting closer. Alien voices were echoing through the outer corridors. "All sectors," Elena announced over the comm. "Help is coming. Unknown contacts approaching from the outer system. Hold your positions. Fight for 10 more minutes." She didn't know if it was really help. For all she knew, it was another alien fleet coming to claim the spoils. But her people needed hope, and hope was all she had left to give them. Outside the command bunker, Zephyrian soldiers were cutting through the inner doors with portable energy weapons. The smell of melting metal filled the air. Elena raised her weapon and prepared to show the galaxy one more time what humans did when cornered. The longest night was almost over. The inner doors of the command bunker glowed red-hot as Zephyrian cutting beams carved through the reinforced metal. Elena could hear alien voices just beyond the barrier, harsh and guttural sounds that the universal translator was struggling to interpret. Her small group of defenders crouched behind overturned tables and equipment cabinets, weapons ready for what would likely be their final battle. 30 seconds until breach, Sarah reported, her voice steady despite the desperate situation. The young officer had proven herself worthy of any military in the galaxy over the past few hours. Dr. Chen was hunched over his sensor console, frantically adjusting settings and filters. "Elena, I'm getting clearer readings on those contacts. The energy signatures are definitely human, but the ships, they're massive. Bigger than anything in our colony databases." Elena felt her heart racing. Help might be coming, but would it arrive in time? The sounds of cutting had stopped, which meant the aliens were about to breach. She raised her sidearm and aimed at the weakened door. "Everyone ready," she whispered. The door exploded inward in a shower of sparks and molten metal. Zephyrian soldiers poured through the opening, their four-armed forms moving with predatory grace. Elena opened fire, her plasma bolt catching the first alien center mass and sending it spinning backward into its companions. The command center erupted in weapons fire. The humans fought with desperate courage, but they were outnumbered 10-1. Sarah's military training showed as she systematically targeted alien officers, but for every Zephyrian that fell, 2 more took its place. Dr. Chen never stopped working his console, even as energy bolts scorched the air around him. "They're closer!" he shouted over the noise of battle. "The human ships are definitely closing on our position." A Zephyrian soldier made it through the defensive fire and lunged at Elena with its razor-sharp claws. She rolled aside and put 3 plasma bolts into its chitinous chest, but its armor absorbed most of the damage. The alien swung at her with its secondary arms, and she felt claws rake across her shoulder, tearing through her uniform and drawing blood. Sarah appeared beside Elena and put her rifle against the alien's head. The point-blank shot finally penetrated. Its armor and the creature collapsed in a pool of blue blood. "Administrator," Tommy Chen's voice crackled through the comm system. "The ships are decloaking. I can see them on visual." Elena risked a glance at the main screen while reloading her weapon. The external cameras were still functioning, and what she saw made her breath catch in her throat. Ships were materializing in the space around New Geneva. Not the sleek, crystalline vessels of the Zephyrian fleet, but massive human warships, unlike anything Elena had ever seen. The lead ship was over 1 kilometer long, its hull bristling with weapon emplacements and armor plating. Behind it came dozens more, destroyers, cruisers, carriers, ships of designs that didn't exist in any colonial database. "Tommy, how many ships are we looking at?" I count 600 vessels, Administrator. It's the biggest fleet I've ever seen." Elena felt tears streaming down her face as she continued firing at the Zephyrian soldiers. 600 ships. After 3 years of silence, after accepting that Earth was gone and humanity was scattered, 600 human warships had come for New Geneva. High above the planet, High Commander Thrak Vel was experiencing the first real shock of his military career. His tactical officers were reporting impossible readings. A massive human fleet had appeared from nowhere, materializing from hyperspace with coordinates that suggested they had been traveling for months. "How did they find us?" Thrakvel demanded. "This system is not on any human navigation charts." His communications officer, a young Zephyrian named Keth Var, was monitoring human transmissions. "Commander, I'm detecting a powerful signal broadcast from the planet's surface." The humans sent a distress beacon. A beacon? To whom? The human homeworld fell to the Hegemony Coalition 3 cycles ago. But Kethvar's readings didn't lie. The human fleet was real, and it was moving into attack formation with a precision that spoke of extensive military training. The lead human vessel opened a communication channel to the Zephyrian flagship. The image that appeared on Thrakvel's screen was that of a human female in military uniform, her face weathered by years of command. Behind her, the bridge of her ship bustled with activity as officers prepared for battle. "Attention, Zephyrian. Vessels," the human said in a voice that carried absolute authority. "This is Admiral Catherine Ross of the United Earth ship Unbroken Dawn, commanding the 5th Expeditionary Fleet of the Terran Federation. You are ordered to withdraw immediately from human space." Thrakvel found his voice after a moment of stunned silence. "Impossible, the human homeworld fell, your species is scattered and broken." Admiral Ross smiled, and there was something predatory in that expression that reminded Thrakvel uncomfortably of his own species' hunting instincts. "Reports of humanity's death have been greatly exaggerated, Commander. You have 60 seconds to begin withdrawal from this system before we demonstrate why that's true." The Zephyrian commander looked at his tactical display. 37 ships against 600. Even with superior individual technology, the math was impossible. "You cannot protect every human colony," Thrakvel said, trying to project confidence he no longer felt. The Empire spans hundreds of worlds. We will hunt your species across the galaxy. Let me explain something about humans, Commander. Admiral Ross replied. We don't abandon our own. Ever. Attack one human settlement and the entire Terran Federation will come for you. We've been fighting our way through hostile space for 3 years just to reach this one colony. Thrakvel felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. 3 years. The humans had been traveling for 3 years, fighting unknown battles against unknown enemies, all to rescue 50,000 colonists on a distant world. Your 60 seconds are up, Admiral Ross said. The Battle of New Geneva began with a display of human military doctrine that would become legendary throughout the galaxy. The human fleet didn't simply attack. They executed a complex multi-phase assault that demonstrated centuries of military evolution. The first wave consisted of fighter squadrons launched from carrier battleships. Hundreds of small, fast vessels swarmed toward the Zephyrian fleet like angry insects. But these were no primitive atmospheric craft. They were space superiority fighters equipped with quantum torpedoes and particle beam weapons. Thrakvel watched in growing horror as his point defense systems were overwhelmed. The human fighters moved in coordinated formations, using electronic warfare to disrupt Zephyrian targeting systems while delivering devastating attacks against his ship's weapon emplacements. Return fire, he ordered. All ships, target the human carriers. But the Zephyrian fleet found itself unable to close with the enemy. Human destroyers had deployed gravity interdiction fields that prevented faster-than-light retreat, while cruiser squadrons provided long-range fire support with weapons that hit harder than anything the Empire had encountered. Down on the planet's surface, the sound of the battle could be heard even through the atmosphere. The Zephyrian soldiers in the command bunker paused in their assault, looking up as their comrades died in the void above. Elena took advantage of their distraction to rally her defenders. Now, while they're confused, the small group of humans pushed forward, reclaiming critical sections of the command center. Dr. Chen was able to get back to his console and establish contact with the human fleet. UES Unbroken Dawn, this is New Geneva Colony Control. We're still here, Admiral. Barely, but we're here. Admiral Ross's voice came through clearly despite the interference from the orbital battle. Colony Control, this is Admiral Ross. We received your beacon and came as fast as we could. Can you mark Zephyrian ground positions for orbital strike? Elena grabbed the communications headset. Admiral, this is Administrator Elena Vasquez. We have civilians in deep shelters throughout the colony. Precision strikes only. Understood, Administrator. We'll take care of the ground forces. Just hold on a little longer. On the tactical display, Elena could see the orbital battle spreading across the entire system. The human fleet had broken into smaller task forces, each one engaging different sections of the Zephyrian fleet. But it wasn't a chaotic brawl. Every movement was coordinated, every attack calculated for maximum effect. A flight of human fighters screamed through New Geneva's atmosphere, their sleek forms barely visible as they strafed Zephyrian positions throughout the colony. The aliens who had been advancing confidently through the streets suddenly found themselves under attack. From above, Jake Morrison's voice crackled over the comm from the mining district. Administrator, the aliens are retreating. They're falling back to their landing craft. Elena switched the external cameras to show the main plaza. Zephyrian soldiers were, indeed, withdrawing, but they weren't running in panic. They moved with military discipline, covering each other as they fell back to defensive positions around their landing craft. They're regrouping, Sarah observed, probably hoping their fleet can punch through and extract them. But the orbital battle was going badly for the Zephyrians. Elena watched through the command center's telescope feeds as human battleships systematically dismantled their alien counterparts. The Zephyrian ships were individually superior in some ways, faster, more maneuverable, with better energy shields. But the humans fought as a coordinated whole, using tactics that turned the Zephyrians' advantages against them. One of the alien cruisers attempted to break away from the main battle and escape to hyperspace. 3 human destroyers moved to intercept, their combined firepower overwhelming the Zephyrian vessel's defenses. The alien ship disappeared in a ball of nuclear fire that was visible even from the planet's surface. Admiral Ross's voice came over the communication channel again. All Zephyrian vessels, this is your final warning. Surrender now or be destroyed. We have no desire to commit genocide, but we will not allow this attack on human civilians to go unanswered. Thrakvel looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers. Fear was not an emotion that Zephyrians experienced often, but they were experiencing it now. In less than 20 minutes, the human fleet had reduced his force by 2/3. His remaining ships were damaged and running low on ammunition. Commander, his tactical officer reported, we are detecting additional human contacts at the edge of the system. It appears to be reinforcements. Thrakvel closed his eyes. Reinforcements. As if 600 ships weren't enough, the humans were bringing more. Open a channel to the human admiral, he said quietly. Admiral Ross appeared on his screen again, and Thrakvel could see the bridge of her ship behind her. Human officers working with calm efficiency, weapons officers standing, ready to deliver death, communications personnel coordinating with dozens of other vessels. This was not a desperate rescue mission. This was a military machine that had traveled across the galaxy for the sole purpose of protecting 50,000 humans on a distant world. Admiral Ross, Thrakvel said formally. High Commander. Thrakvel of the Zephyrian Empire requests terms for surrender. Unconditional withdrawal from human space, Ross replied immediately. Your ground forces will be allowed to evacuate, but any Zephyrian vessel that enters a human system in the future will be destroyed without warning. And if we refuse? Admiral Ross gestured toward her tactical display where the remaining Zephyrian ships appeared as small red dots surrounded by a sea of blue human vessels. Then in 10 minutes there won't be any Zephyrian vessels left to refuse. Thrakvel looked at his tactical display one more time. 14 ships remained out of his original 37. The humans could destroy them all without taking significant casualties. I accept your terms, he said. Wise choice, Admiral Ross replied. Begin immediate evacuation of your ground forces. You have 30 minutes before we start targeting your landing craft. On the surface of New Geneva, the Zephyrian soldiers began loading onto their transport craft with a speed that suggested they were very eager to leave. Elena watched from the command center as the aliens who had seemed so terrifying just hours ago retreated like beaten animals. Tommy, what's the status on those reinforcements your dad detected? Tommy's excited voice came back immediately. They're not reinforcements, Administrator. They're colony ships. Medical vessels, construction ships, supply transports. The fleet brought everything we need to rebuild. Elena sank into her command chair as the full magnitude of what had happened began to sink in. Earth hadn't just sent a rescue mission, they had sent a complete support fleet. After 3 years of silence, humanity had not only remembered New Geneva, they had mounted the largest military operation in human history to save it. Dr. Chen appeared at her shoulder, his face streaked with dust and his uniform torn, but alive and smiling. Elena, I'm getting communication requests from every human ship in the fleet. They want to talk to us. They want to know we're safe. Elena nodded, still too stunned to speak. Through the command center's windows, she could see the last Zephyrian landing craft rising into the orange sky, carrying away an enemy that had learned a terrible lesson about attacking human colonies. Admiral Ross's image appeared on the main screen again, and this time her stern expression had softened into something approaching warmth. Administrator Vasquez, this is Admiral Ross. The Zephyrian fleet is withdrawing from the system. New Geneva is secure. Elena found her voice at last. Admiral, we thought Earth was gone. We thought we were alone. Earth never forgets its children, Administrator. We've been fighting our way here for 3 years through hegemony space, through contested systems, through regions of space that no human had ever seen. But we made it, and we brought everything you need to rebuild and expand. Elena looked around the command center at the faces of her people, her family, who had survived the longest night of their lives. Admiral, how did you know to come? How did you find us? Admiral Ross smiled, and for a moment she looked less like a fleet commander and more like a proud mother. 3 years ago we received a partial transmission from New Geneva. Just a Few seconds of signal, but it was enough to give us your coordinates. It told us you were still fighting, still free, still human. That was all we needed to know. Elena felt tears streaming down her face again. 3 years? You've been traveling for 3 years just to reach us? Administrator, let me tell you something about humanity that the Zephyrians just learned the hard way. We don't abandon our own. Ever. Doesn't matter how far we have to travel, how many enemies we have to fight, or how long it takes. When humans are in trouble, other humans come for them. On the tactical display, the last Zephyrian ship disappeared into hyperspace, carrying news of humanity's fury to the far corners of the galaxy. But Elena wasn't watching the display anymore. She was looking at the faces of her people, alive, and free and safe under the protection of Earth's greatest armada. The longest night was over. The dawn had come at last. The Battle of New Geneva was over in 17 minutes. What had taken the Zephyrian Empire months to plan and years to justify ended in less time than it took most species to prepare for lunch. High Commander Thrakvel's once mighty fleet limped away from the system, reduced to 14 damaged vessels carrying the survivors of humanity's wrath. Admiral Catherine Ross stood on the bridge of the UES Unbroken Dawn, watching the tactical display as the last Zephyrian ship disappeared into hyperspace. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency to coordinate the aftermath of battle. Damage reports, casualty assessments, fleet reorganization, all the tedious but necessary work that followed combat. Admiral, her communications officer reported, "We're receiving surrender broadcasts from 17 different alien vessels throughout the sector. Word is spreading fast." Ross nodded. That was the point. The Zephyrian Empire had built its reputation on the idea that attacking isolated human colonies was safe and profitable. Today, that reputation had died along with 23 alien warships. "Send the standard response," Ross ordered. "Immediate withdrawal from human space, reparations for damages, and formal recognition of Terran Federation's sovereignty over all human settlements. Any vessel that refuses gets the same treatment as the Zephyrians." On the surface of New Geneva, Elena Vasquez stood in the main plaza watching human dropships descend from the sky. But these weren't military assault craft. They were medical, transports, supply vessels, construction ships. The fleet had brought everything needed to not just save the colony, but help it thrive. The first shuttle to land carried Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the fleet's chief medical officer, along with a full surgical team. Within minutes, they had established a field hospital and were treating the wounded from the battle. Elena watched Dr. Foster work alongside the newcomers, sharing information about Zephyrian weapons and their effects on human physiology. "Administrator Vasquez?" Elena turned to see a young officer approaching her across the plaza. He wore the uniform of the Terran Federation Navy, with Lieutenant Commander's stripes on his sleeves. "I'm Commander David Park, Admiral Ross's aide. The Admiral requests your presence aboard the flagship for a full briefing." Elena looked around at the bustling activity in the plaza. Human engineers were already surveying damage to the colony's infrastructure. Military personnel were securing abandoned Zephyrian equipment. Civilians were emerging from the deep shelters, blinking in the orange sunlight and staring in wonder at the rescue fleet overhead. "Of course," Elena said, "but first, I need to address my people." Commander Park nodded. "The Admiral expected you'd want to do that. Take all the time you need." Elena activated her portable communicator and opened a channel to the entire colony. Throughout New Geneva, her voice reached every shelter, every street, every person who had survived the longest night of their lives. "Citizens of New Geneva, this is Administrator Vasquez. The Zephyrian fleet has withdrawn from our system. We are safe, we are free, and we are no longer alone." She paused, watching the faces of people gathered in the plaza. Miners who had fought with laser drills, families who had hidden in underground shelters, children who had monitored alien communications. All of them had played a part in New Geneva's survival. "For 3 years we believed that Earth had forgotten us. We were wrong. The Terran Federation never stopped looking for us, never stopped fighting to reach us. Today we learned something important about what it means to be human. We learned that no matter how far we travel, No matter how isolated we become, we are part of something larger than ourselves. Elena could see people throughout the plaza wiping away tears. Dr. Chen stood with his son Tommy, both of them grinning despite their exhaustion. Sarah Kim was helping coordinate the arrival of military supplies, her tactical experience proving valuable even in peacetime operations. "We have work to do," Elena continued. "We need to rebuild what was damaged, expand what we've built, and prepare for the future. But we do that work knowing that we are not forgotten, not abandoned, not alone. We are citizens of New Geneva, and New Geneva is part of the human family." The cheers that followed could be heard across the entire colony. 2 hours later, Elena found herself aboard the UES Unbroken Dawn, walking through corridors that represented the pinnacle of human military engineering. The ship was massive, over 1 kilometer long and capable of housing 10,000 personnel. But what impressed Elena most was the efficiency of its crew. Every person she passed moved with purpose, carrying out duties that kept the fleet operational. Admiral Ross met her in the ship's main conference room, a space large enough to hold planning sessions for the entire fleet command staff. But today, it was just the two of them, sitting across from each other at a table that had probably seen briefings for dozens of military operations. "Administrator Vasquez," Ross began, "first, let me say that your people's performance during the Zephyrian attack was exemplary. 17 minutes of resistance against a full military assault, with improvised weapons and civilian volunteers. That's going to become required reading at the academy." Elena shook her head. "We just did what we had to do." "That's exactly what makes it remarkable," Ross replied. "But I didn't bring you here just to exchange compliments. I need to brief you on the larger situation." The Admiral activated a holographic display that showed a 3-dimensional map of local space. Elena could see New Geneva's system, but also dozens of other star systems, many of them marked with different colored indicators. 3 years ago, we lost contact with 17 human colonies, Ross explained. New Geneva, Kepler Station, Centauri Outpost, and 14 others. We initially assumed it was a communication network failure, but intelligence reports suggested something more. "Serious?" Elena studied the map. "Alien attacks?" "Multiple species, actually. The Zephyrian Empire, the Hegemony Coalition, the Kresh Confederacy, and several smaller powers. They had formed what they called the Cleansing Alliance, an agreement to systematically eliminate human presence from contested space. The Admiral highlighted several systems in red. "We lost 4 colonies completely before we could organize a response, but the other 13, including New Geneva, managed to hold out long enough for us to reach them." Elena felt a chill. 13 colonies. You've been fighting this war for 3 years? "The largest military operation in human history," Rossi confirmed. 6 separate fleets, each one tasked with relieving specific colonies. The 5th Expeditionary Fleet, my command, was assigned to the Outer Rim systems. New Geneva was our final objective. Elena looked at the map again, trying to comprehend the scale of what Admiral Ross was describing. How many ships? How many people? Total fleet strength was just over 3,000 vessels. Personnel, approximately 2 million military and civilian support staff. The entire Terran Federation committed to this operation. The numbers were staggering. Elena had spent 3 years assuming that Earth was gone, that humanity was scattered and broken. Instead, her species had mounted the largest rescue operation in galactic history. "Admiral, the Zephyrian commander said that Earth had fallen to the Hegemony Coalition." Ross smiled grimly. "The Hegemony tried to attack Earth about 2 years ago. They sent a fleet of 800 ships to demand our surrender. Would you like to know what happened to them?" Elena nodded, though she was beginning to suspect she already knew. Complete destruction. All 800 vessels. The Hegemony learned the same lesson the Zephyrians just learned. Attacking humans has consequences. The Admiral modified the holographic display to show a different view of local space. This time, Elena could see fleet movements, supply lines, and what looked like a massive network of military installations. "The Cleansing Alliance made a fundamental mistake," Ross continued. "They assumed that humans were like other species, that we would write off our distant colonies as acceptable losses. They didn't understand that we consider every human settlement to be part of our home territory. Elena studied the display. So this isn't just a rescue mission. No, Administrator. This is a declaration. We're establishing permanent military bases in every system we've liberated. Any species that attacks a human colony in the future will face immediate retaliation from the full strength of the Terran Federation. The implications were enormous. Elena had grown up in an era when humanity was still expanding cautiously into the galaxy, establishing small colonies and hoping to avoid conflicts with established alien powers. But the war had changed everything. Humanity was no longer content to be a minor player in galactic politics. What about the aliens who didn't participate in the alliance? Elena asked. We've received formal diplomatic communications from 47 different species in the past year, Ross replied. All of them want to establish peaceful relations with humanity. Word travels fast in the galaxy, and everyone has heard about what happened to the Cleansing Alliance. Elena thought about High Commander Thrak-Vel and his confidence that humans were easy prey. That confidence had cost his people 23 warships and thousands of lives. Admiral, what happens to New Geneva now? That's partly up to you, Ross said. The colony can remain independent with Federation protection, or you can formally join the Federation as a full member world. Either way, you'll have everything you need to expand and thrive. Elena looked out through the conference rooms, windows at the fleet surrounding New Geneva. Hundreds of human ships representing the combined might of their species. 3 years ago, she had been the administrator of a forgotten mining colony. Now she was part of something that had reshaped the balance of power in the galaxy. I think I need to discuss this with my people, Elena said. Of course. Take all the time you need. We're not going anywhere. 3 days later, Elena stood, once again in New Geneva's main plaza. But the scene was very different from the desperate preparations of a week ago. Human construction crews were working alongside colonists to repair damage from the battle. New buildings were rising to accommodate the support personnel who would be staying to help establish the colony's expanded infrastructure. Children played in the streets under the watchful eyes of Federation security teams. The mines were operating at full capacity, with new equipment that made their old machinery look primitive by comparison. The hydroponic farms were being expanded to feed a population that was expected to triple within the next year. Dr. Chen approached Elena carrying a data pad with the latest reports. The quantum communication array is online, he said. We're back in contact with Earth and all the other colonies. It's like the past 3 years never happened. Elena smiled. Except for everything we learned about ourselves. And everything the galaxy learned about us, Dr. Foster added, joining the conversation. She had been working with Federation medical teams to establish a full hospital that could serve the entire sector. I've been reading the intelligence reports. 23 alien species have requested permission to establish trade relations with humanity in the past week. Elena wasn't surprised. The Battle of New Geneva had been brief, but its message had been clear. Humanity protected its own, no matter the cost, no matter the distance, no matter the odds. That evening, Elena received a personal communication from Earth. The message was from Director Helen Morrison of the Colonial Administration, the same office that had originally authorized New Geneva's establishment. Administrator Vasquez, Director Morrison said from Elena's office screen, I want to personally thank you and your people for your service to humanity. Your resistance against the Zephyrian attack bought us the time we needed to reach you. More importantly, your 3 years of independence proved that human colonies can survive and thrive even under the most difficult circumstances. Elena felt a surge of pride. We just did our jobs, Director. You did much more than that. You showed the galaxy what happens when you threaten human civilians. The political ramifications are still unfolding, but early reports suggest that several alien powers are reconsidering their expansion plans. No one wants to face what the Zephyrians faced. The director paused, and Elena could see the satisfaction in her expression. Administrator, I'm authorized to offer you a position in the Federation's diplomatic corps. Your experience managing an isolated colony and your first-hand knowledge of alien military tactics make you an ideal candidate for our new sector development program. Elena was honored, but she already knew her answer. Thank you, Director, but I'm needed here. New Geneva is my home. I expected you'd say that, Morrison replied with a smile. In that case, I'm pleased to inform you that New Geneva has been selected as the administrative center for the entire Outer Rim sector. Congratulations, Sector Administrator Vasquez. After the communication ended, Elena sat in her office looking out at the colony she had helped build and defend. In the distance, she could see the lights of Federation ships maintaining their protective patrol. The sight still filled her with wonder. A soft knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Tommy Chen peered into the office, his face bright with excitement. Administrator, my dad sent me to tell you that we're receiving communication requests from human colonies in 3 different sectors. They want to share information about alien contact protocols. Elena smiled. Tell your father I'll be down to the communication center in a few minutes. As Tommy ran off to deliver the message, Elena took one last look at the view from her window. New Geneva was no longer the most distant human outpost in the galaxy. It was no longer forgotten or alone. It was part of a vast network of human worlds, protected by the mightiest fleet in galactic history, connected by bonds that could not be broken by distance or danger. The Zephyrian Empire had learned the hard way that attacking humans had consequences. But more importantly, humanity had learned something about itself. They had learned that no matter how far they traveled among the stars, no matter how many worlds they settled, they would always be one people with one unbreakable commitment. They would never abandon their own. In the years that followed, the Battle of New Geneva would be remembered as the moment when humanity announced its true place in the galaxy, not as desperate colonists scratching out a living on distant worlds, but as a species united by bonds stronger than space itself. The Cleansing Alliance had sought to eliminate humanity from the galaxy. Instead, they had forged humanity into something stronger, something unified, something that would reshape the balance of power among the stars. And it had all begun with 50,000 people on a distant world who refused to surrender, who chose to fight against impossible odds, who proved that the human spirit could not be broken, even at the edge of forever. Elena Vasquez stood at her window and smiled, watching the stars that no longer seemed cold and distant. Somewhere among those points of light were other human worlds, other colonies, other families, all of them connected, all of them protected, all of them part of something larger than themselves. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity's wrath, but more importantly, humanity had learned to trust in its own strength. And the stars would never be the same.